everybody. This is Dr. Fang-Mei Law from Tiffin University. Today I'm going to interview students. Actually, she was student. Right now, she was doctor. Okay, Dr. Chiu.
Yeah.
Chiu. Hi.
Hi, 老师。Hi, Dr. Law.
Okay. I was introduced by her advisor 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Before she came to America, Ohio State University to study for her PhD. Right. And then 4 years later, with her hard working, right now she's Dr. Chiu.
Yeah, I just completed my PhD program just 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. And then she have a very unique major in her for her PhD study. She's major in science, how to teach science for people with vision impairment.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think quite often, a lot of people already think science is hard. Teaching science is not easy job. And then now she wants to know how to, she wants to focus on the vision impairment.
Right.
So then I think for this interview, I'd like to concentrate on where she started to have this idea and then how she get to here.
Okay.
So can you share with us introduce yourself
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name in Chinese is Ying-Ting. Here, my friends, my colleagues, they call me Ting as my English name. And I came to the United States 4 years ago for my PhD program in the Department of Teaching and Learning at the Ohio State University. And before that, I was in Taiwan. My major was physics, then master's in science education.
Okay.
I had worked for 3 nonprofit foundations in Taiwan before I came to the U.S.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we will talk about my journey, how I majored in physics.
Yeah.
It's hard science, right?
Yeah.
Then I entered the field of science education, then specifically for students who are blind or visually impaired.
Yeah. Because when people think about learning science, they may think about they are going to work in the lab, or become scientists, or all that different, or they will make a big money like that. So do you mind to share with us when is the first time you start to have that mindset, say I want to help people, with vision impairment? How that journey started?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the pivotal point was about 11 or 12 years ago when I was doing my first master's program in science education at National Taiwan Normal University.
Okay.
I just graduated from college and prepared for 1 year for the master's program, but I didn't know what I exactly wanted to do.
Yeah.
During my college, I studied physics, but I realized I didn't like doing experiments in the lab.
Okay.
I tutored some students during that time, and I figured that I like people.
Okay.
So I kind of like teaching. That's why I chose to do a master's program in science education, but specifically at the time, I was 24, 23.
Yeah.
I didn't know what exactly I was gonna do.
Yeah.
So at that time, I tried some new things.
Yeah.
I saw a advertisement, like a recruitment from a nonprofit foundation for the blind, asking people whose background is science to teach a group of elementary school students with visual impairment. So I was like, oh, that's not difficult. I'm going to teach them, So that was the point that at the time, first time I taught students who are blind.
Okay. So that experience make you feel like they have a group of people actually is something you want to do to helping them out.
I didn't think much at that time.
Yeah.
That was a volunteering work on Saturdays to go to a library. There was a library full of blind in Taipei City at that time.
Yeah.
So all the volunteers gathered there to teach a group of elementary kids who are blind to teach them science, including physics, chemistry, like some easy hands-on activities, biology, everything. I remember that opened my eye because I used to teach students science, specifically like physical science, by demonstrating some experiments or just to show them the phenomena, you know, so they can, wow, now I see that phenomena. What's that all about? What's the principle or theory behind that phenomena? So, but for students who are blind specifically, they cannot see, right? How to use an alternative way to help them to know there is something like some phenomenon like that, and to help them to see the world. That was the first thing that came to my mind. Like how to really help students who are blind to see those phenomena and how to help them to learn science.
So do you remember during that year, from beginning to the end of the year, that in where these ideas start to instill in your mind?
It didn't grow honestly at the time. I was not very happy during that master's program. I think I was looking for something like more things to do. I wanted to try different things, then I can make a decision. Like, oh, I'm going for that direction. So I was still looking. That's why I didn't complete that master's program. I stopped the program at some point. I tried different things, and including that volunteering opportunity. After that, I worked for 3 nonprofit foundations. The first one was teaching in the mountain area to teach students, indigenous students, math and science. The second one, I went back to the nonprofit foundation for the blind, and I volunteered as a secretary to carry out some educational activities for students who are blind. So it got closer to education for students with visual impairments. And the third, it's a last job before I did my second master's program. It was at National Zhanghua University of Education, because the nonprofit foundation I work for collaborated with the university doing a science camp for students with visual impairment. So I got to know some people at that university, and they told me there was a position that, you know, they need people to do science education and students with visual impairment.
Wow, so that is become a job.
Yeah, it was a job
organized
from the project. So it got me closer and closer to science education and students with visual impairment.
Then in what point that make you, because okay, that's a job, and then you like it, but then in what point make you decide you want to study further for your PhD in that field, and even come to America?
So I just mentioned that I didn't finish my first master's program at National Taiwan Normal University. So at National Zhanghua University of Education, I was doing the secretary project, executive secretary job. So I saw some students, graduate school students in science education, they were learning in the science classroom. I just felt that I needed to complete my master's program in science education there.
Okay.
So I discussed with my supervisor and Dr. Wu Zhongqing. He encouraged me to pursue my master's program there.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was the pivotal point that I quit my job
Okay.
and started to do my master's program again.
Okay.
But fortunately, yeah, it was really good that because we had a science camp for students with visual impairment there,
Yeah.
I could focus on the science education that we provided for students with visual impairment at that time to do my thesis.
So you can do your study
Yeah.
and then also run the
Yeah.
involved to the camp,
Yeah,
and then what then you use that for your thesis research.
yeah. So I didn't answer your question. So it was the beginning that I started to think, oh, I'm going to dedicate myself in the field.
Yeah.
And when I was doing my master's program, like a literature review, I realized there were not much resource, like in terms of curriculum, lesson plans, hands-on materials, or research specifically for this student population, meaning students with visual impairment. It's a long term, but yeah. So it got me to think, oh, I can do something for this group of students. I can help them to learn science.
Yeah.
And the majority of information that I got at that time was from the US and some European countries like Norway, England, some countries there. So I learned English. So I think probably going to the US
Okay.
is a much better choice. Yeah, that's why I started to think, oh, I can do a PhD to continue
Your dream, your patient.
and to get more knowledge in this field,
Yeah.
so I can prepare myself
Yeah.
to serve this student
Yeah.
population.
Yeah. So then you spend 4 years in America and then focus on this field. So
Yeah.
the more you learn, what? The more you love the field, or
It has been very challenging. I chose Ohio State because of my advisor. I read her articles when I was doing my master's program.
okay.
She did a lot about conceptual understandings of students who are visually impaired science concepts. So it's very specific what I really wanted to learn. The person, she was a person I really want to work with.
Yeah.
I applied to some programs, some universities in the US, but eventually I knew Ohio State was where I should go. So I came here. And it was my privilege to work with her closely in the last 4 years. But because she is a person like everybody knows in the field of visual impairment, oh, she does science education for students with visual impairment.
Okay.
I learned a lot from her, and I know as I get to know more about visual impairment field and the science education field, I know there's still a lot of things that we can do for students with visual impairment in terms of their science learning.
Yeah.
So that question, my response would be, as I know more,
Yeah.
I think I'm humbled, because I know there's still so much to do, and it's not because people don't want to do it.
Yeah.
It's challenging for the way we learn science is very visual.
Yeah.
But how to teach those who cannot see to understand science, that's a totally different story.
Yeah.
And it's challenge, and that challenged me all the time, even until now.
Okay. So now you have your PhD, and in the future, are you want to go to do more research oriented, or you want to go to more like design, tour, how to help them, or you want to work directly with people?
That's
What do you
a
think?
great question. So I have been thinking about that question all the time.
Yeah.
Since I got into this field.
Yeah.
So I want to do all of them.
Yeah.
I like doing research a lot. I know there's a lack of research specifically for in science education for students with visual impairment. But I still want to put a theory into practice. Because in special education, it's important what are we going to do?
Yeah.
It's not what are we going to read,
Yeah.
So to me, both are very important,
Yeah.
theory and the practice.
Yeah.
But without practice, to me, that doesn't help students. So I would like to develop or research and development to create more curricula or evidence-based hands-on materials for students with visual impairment to learn science. And it has to be based on research. It's not from, I think this is a better way to teach them without assess their understanding. Does it make sense? So I think I want to do all of them, but there's a lot. And I hope, one thing I want to do is also to advocate for students with visual impairment. I want to include more people, like science teachers, science education researchers, to know more about students with visual impairment and how to teach them science. Because most of the time they are scared when there is a student who are blind in their classroom, right? So I also want to do the advocacy,
Wow. So when people hear you with this major, what their response?
That's very interesting because what are the courses that I took during my doctoral program, it's based on the discussion with my advisor. So it's kind of flexible, it's individualized.
Okay.
Although I was in the program named Language Education Society, based on this name of the program, you can tell it's a very broad name, Language Education Society. But to me, it's good because my advisor gave me a lot of advice in terms of what I needed to learn to obtain a knowledge, to develop my capability in this field, specifically science education, visual impairment education, all the things. So now many people
Understand?
They don't have to understand, but from my knowledge, it's not a general program that people will see. No matter it's in Taiwan or in the United States, because it's a very small field. It's small because visual impairment is a low incidence disability, meaning there are many different disabilities, right? Like intellectual disability, ADHD, yeah, or hearing impairment, or autism, all different disabilities. But those who have visual impairment, it's a small number. You cannot see people or students with visual impairment like all the time. So it's a small field because it's a small student population.
You feel lonely sometimes?
I feel lonely all the time, even until now. But I think what I wanted to say is that
You should say you are special, not lonely.
I really like this field.
Yeah.
Like, I really like science education, and I really like students with visual impairment. I don't know how to explain, but I feel I can really do something for them as an educator, as a researcher. So I feel happy. I feel that that's the field for me to get through my PhD program, and I really want to continue my passion along. I mean, even after the PhD program, I still want to continue this work in the future.
I think you should say it's very special because quite often, when we see people with a disability, we just assume, when they're in school, we just need to make sure they are survive. We are not really trying harder for them to really learn, the enough knowledge for, especially for science, right? But then Ying-Ting's point of view is, they just like everybody else. You want them to learn, use whatever the way, because those people, they have their own way, right? They may not use their eye, but they can use their hearing, their touch, and to learn. Alternative ways.
To understand the same thing.
So they are so lucky to have people like Ying-Ting want to devote her life,
See, there is a link in this field, and to me, like social justice in education, to me, it means a lot. It means to me that everybody has equal access to the education. It cannot be decided based on their gender, race, ethnicity, socio-economic status, disability, all the things. I'm from a working class family, so to me, I think that's what influenced me to really see, equal opportunity is so important. And I was fortunate to have that volunteering experience to teach a group of students visual impairment science. So I saw that they needed people like me whose background in science or science education to know more about them, and I think I can become a bridge. So to me, social justice in education is really my philosophy.
Wow, that is very important.
Thank you.
How do we treat them fair in class, in education, and we open this to the whole world, Everybody can learn. As an educator, we need to find a way for them to learn. Right? And then find a way to connect with their potential. Right? And I think that's it give us a very good point. I think that's very important. Okay, I know we still a lot of things we can learn from Dr. Chiu, but then we will save this for next time.
Okay.
How about that? Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lu. I'm not used to call her Dr. Lu. I usually call her 老师. That's a Chinese term to show your respect to those who are your mentors or who teach you. So thank you.
So hopefully this interview you find helpful. And then if you are interested about my channel, you can
Subscribe.
subscribe.
Yeah.
Okay, see you next time.
See
Bye-bye.
you.